Hi. Was the alliance, or was the coming together of the Matini from the Indo-European or from India, as well as Oshawa and the Hittites, and the convergence that occurs from Turkey through parts of the Levant and Middle East, were they there to help, actually to support each other in many respects, to look after the onslaught that was coming in from the north? Because these were very violent, disgusting creatures. That's the only way you can describe them, as well as the changes in the environment. And did they come back into this area that was originally where their relatives, their wheat, how it spread out, the Anatolian farmers, and the relationship between Hippa and Hibba, the one who brings your soul up to heaven, the mother of all the living, what we call Hava? Were they actually all relating, and were they there in part, to get back to these roots because of what was happening? The Hara people in India, their land was falling apart, of Sarasvati, and of course they have the Hurri, as well as looking at the Horus, which is really plural Hurri. Were they in there beginning to look at the notion that the people there were worshiping the wrong gods? And the reason why I say that, and let's see if I can come out of here, because here is Hippa, Tadu Hippa, Gilda Hippa, Trushara, and this is, of course, the Rata means a charge. Epirath and Epirata, this is seer, but Epirata is still the charge. Nefertari and Paduhippa, here we have another Hippa. This is Hittite, the others are in here Matini, and they're all intermarrying into Egypt after about 1500 BC. Here we have Ahara. This is actually Ahara. Tarian Sanskrit can mean a basket, a water, or a boat. So Nefertari might be where the Moses story comes in with Ramses. And I have all of this here. So I'm just going to come back to this point because I don't have any internet. If you can see, the monitors went through and they closed me out here. And this is what I'm just going to put me on pause for a moment. Hi, I've been talking to myself for the last 10 minutes, so let's come in and pick up here. We have all these terms in here like Tushrata. This is actually Sanskrit. The Rata and Tush are actually within the Sanskrit tradition. Here we have Amun-Ra. Look at all of the Hippa. Here we have Afratha, which is actually Hepa, that's not an F, Heparath, that would be a seer, or Heparatha, that would be Hepa's chariots that would have been found around the area of Zion. In what area would this have been? One of the 7 mountains. The Opel, which is Opael, that would have been within that mountain range. So here we have all of this intermarriage, and what I'm saying is that after whatever catastrophe happened, somewhere about 6,000, 5,000 BC, people from Anatolia spread out to bring agriculture around the world. Remember, go and subdue the creatures. The only way I can describe what came out of the Russian steppes, the Celts, I don't want to, it wasn't just the Celts, the name escapes me, but also the Thracians that come down, also out of the Balkans. And as they descend down, because they got hit with whatever happened, and they're very, very greedy. The Scythians, those are the others. These are people that they're not just polygamist. They're not human. They're rabid. That's the only word that we can use to only word I can think of. Rabid. When the Minoan goddess is holding the two snakes out there, she's telling you to keep the snakes away from your body. Do not let the snakes come to you. These people, there are even groups of Germanic people that had followed more of the Hurrian, and they married later. They were basically monogamous. They had farming. They weren't completely warlike, but they had to prepare for war. These are not big snake worshipping populations. In fact, none of them worship the snakes. The snakes are coming in, they're coming up from certain places, but they're also coming in, when I mean Africa, but they're coming in from the Celts, they're coming in from Draco, the Thracian, we call them Thracian, but Thrace is just a series of sound shifts from the and the Scythians, and the reason why I'm talking about this other group is that this group here represents civilization and human beings, but the other group represents a rabid, diabolical group of people. And I don't remember, when you do drugs, it deteriorates not just your mind, but your genes. When you have mental illness, it goes pushing itself through your genes. So the people who were coming in, who took over, who then bred with more normal women after they decimated these men were actually fighting for their own existence, and not just for the existence of their women. They were fighting for the existence of sanity, something more sanity, and something that God had pushed them in to go through and to try to preserve and pick up. They were from Sarasvati. They were the Hurri. They were the Hurrians. The Hurrians are not Horus, it's a plural noun. They were the Hurri who brought agriculture over. Nakabit, the vulture is then found in Galepi Tempe. These people understood that your soul worked its way through life, different lives as it developed, and that when you die, your soul has to be brought up and reborn through Haba, Chabit, the Chabit, Hapa, Hippa, Ava, Avet, that these are all the midwives who carry your souls. These are all manifestations of the same being. And literally what is coming in from the north, and we're going to call it the area of Russia, the area of the Ukraine, the area, this whole area into part of Mongolia, and that the steppes, what's coming down, just think of them as rabid individuals that are interested in gold, sex, drugs, and they take nothing but slaves and they war on everyone else. Athens did that. Athenian men did not actually go out and work. They had slaves to do their work, and they enslaved their women, so that their women were nothing more than slaves within their homes. It was an appalling system. It went into the Mycenaeans, and if we take a look at the Minoans, and these are the late Minoans, if you look at the murals, which we don't see any pictures of great pornography and people slaying and killing each other. We see pictures of the sea and animals, and we have these pictures of women holding their battle axes, the labyrinth, and then with the two-headed axe, and then we have a woman holding the snakes away from her body. If you look at the Celts and the Scythians and all of them, they have snakes and creatures all over their body. Alexander the Great's mother slept with snakes. She slept with snakes. And so here we have the Minoans saying, keep these snakes away from your body. Keep these snakes off of you. And we have a whole culture here that's saying, oh, well, she's a snake goddess like the others, but that's not what she's doing that at all. The Minoans and all of these other people were, I mean, they were being imposed upon because of the musica celeste of what was going on, but they were actively working to keep this at bay because, again, these are rabid individuals. And so when we take a look at Egypt, Egypt had fallen off the wagon. It was now had Isis, it had Amun, it had these great penis gods ejaculating. Nobody knew to put any clothes on and wear anything. Prior to this point of time, they acted very differently. But all of a sudden, and it began in the Second Kingdom, there is a complete slide going down in terms of the complete grandiose thinking, as well as a shift and an attribution of what's happening to the gods. And with their gods, there's not the same level of accountability. And now we have a priesthood that is a racket. They're a racket. Tamusa or Thamusa goes in and actually gets a hold of the Levant and that area again. And when he does, and when he goes into the area of what we call Israel today and into this area, Thamusa, in order to get them under control and bring them into the god worship of Amun. And that's where we get Amen from. Amen, and the racket of religion. Instead of really the laws, these are grandiose laws instead of real laws that govern us. But what he did, and it's really interesting, is that he went through and said, each one of your townships are going to send me a choice boy, and they're going to come over here to Egypt, and they are going to learn to be my scribes and represent my religion. And when they went there, I'm sure they would have been circumcised, because that was something that the royalty did. That was based upon, that was an African tradition, not a Hurri tradition. It's not Harry, it's African, just like female genital mutilation. And so when we look at that, we have to say to ourselves, all of a sudden now, the Hittites come in and they plow through Babylon. And then we have the Mitanni coming in because they're being inundated by what's attacking them from the north. The Indians are. Remember, the rabid creatures from the north are coming down. And that's where their whole god set changes. And we have pressure coming into Egypt. Grandiose in its thoughts, not really looking after the people as they should be. And nobody is really looking after the soul, because the moment you understand that your soul needs to be holy and it needs to act in a particular way, well, that is my take on things. So we have, all of a sudden, we have the Hittites, we have Nefertari. She is actually writing to Paduhepa. And to give you some idea what a twist, how they have erased Hippa. Yahweh is actually heavenly Hippa. Whoa! They gender bended everything. When we look at Hephaestus, that is Hepa, S, and then a masculine ending. Well, they took Hepa and made it into something deadly and diabolical. We have, in the last great librarian of the archives of Alexander, who was a Neoplatonist. Remember, under Roman law, women were not supposed to preach to men. And so the Christians imposed Roman law on women so that women could not preach. They imposed Roman law. It's not God's law, it was Roman law. And so that's what Paul is actually saying. It's because of the law that we cannot do these things. It's not because God imposed it. It's actually the law. That woman, who was the librarian, was Hypatia. And that actually is hepat, and then sia, which is to have the qualities of. So Hypatia had the qualities of Hippat. Now, we as women have, what happened is the rabid individuals took over civilization and an understanding of God and imposed their diabolical gene structure and mentality on the world. And we are suffering from this rabid, toxic waste culture. Yeah. So I believe that at some point, these people who were living in the Sarasvati, the Hurri, that were interested, as their lives were disintegrating, they needed to push through. And as other lives were disintegrating, they needed to push through. And I think they tried to get the world back on a better course. And it was just, as I said, it was the age of the penis. That's not Aries, is not the Hurries. It's the age of the rabid men and women and their gene pool that descended upon us. And it's time for us to straighten ourselves out. What was interesting is Indra, the Indians at that time began to pull up these silly gods that are sort of falling in line with what these silly Zeuses are. But the interesting thing about Indra is that he is supposed to kill the dragon. And the other interesting thing is that they understand the Hurri are really the holy people. Sarah is her property, is where Ishua or the Ashua come in. They take over the property of the Temeth, the portion of Sarah, or the portion of the Hurris. And unfortunately, the Jews spell casted and twisted and turned, because remember, they made deals with the creature people, and they took those creature people into themselves. Those are the Hebrews, or Avros. They twisted and turned and took the words that were Hattian and Hurrian and Sanskrit and twisted and turned it the way that they wanted to. So Sala, for instance, you need Sala because that's the Hurrian daughter, and that's Virgo. So what did they do to it? After the year 1100 AD, because it's not in the biblical text, it's not in the Aleppo Codice, it's not in the Leningrad Codice, because it's used differently. They made Sala a variation of his and hers, because what they did is they went through and took Hurrian terms, or Hurri, or things pertaining to Hepa, or things pertaining to, and they spell casted. Change your name, change what it means. And they call it magic and spell casting. It's very black magic, actually. And the reason why they experience these things is because they engaged in massive genocide. When they decide to own up to what they did to the Hurrians and the Hattians, and how they stole and took everything from them, when they put Hippa back in and begin sending the souls and making the proper sacrifices, understanding what needs to happen, because you don't just kill animals. When they understand who's really behind all these things and how they twisted and turned Yahweh, how they twisted and turned, they call a uterus a rachem, which is also for the vulture, the Egyptian vulture, which is Hava or Nechabet. They call it a hymn. They call their breast. Actually, ancient Semitic breast was Tadi, not Shaddai. That means of the land. But they call breast hymn. When you twist and turn and spells and change names, and they call it the magic that they're involved in. Well, Rome did the same thing. So did Greece. So has Russia. I'm not going to speak to China. Africa did the same thing. Muslims did the same thing. They all engaged in massive genocide, because remember, these are the rabid people that came in. And they made deals with the outlaws, who were very often pastoralists, who didn't settle down. Some of them wanted to wander, but some of them weren't allowed to settle down because they behaved so badly. There you go. A man will leave his mother and father and live with his wife. I can't begin to tell you what kind of marriages were going on at that time. This is a happy, much more happy family situation. Anyway, I'm going to stop there. I think we need to stop glamorizing the Celts who have snakes all over their body, because they're back, and stop glamorizing the Scythians because they're back with their rabidness and their snakes and everything tattooed all over the body, and the Thrass and the Dracos and the everything, because they're destroying the earth and they're corrupting the people. And we have to stop glamorizing. I'm reaching out to people who are Indian, because you've been hit really hard, and because for some reason you've had to buy into all of this. No, you have a much more holy background. You don't get bent out of shape if somebody talks about the female goddess and she's actually a good being. These other places get completely bent out of shape, and that's because the men were rabid creatures. There's no other way to describe them. Okay, and now they will not let me go up. I know that. Thank you. This is not an up video.